Ukraine and Russia have launched their biggest drone attacks against each other since the start of the war.
Officials in Moscow say hundreds of Ukrainian drones have targeted the city.
Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he hopes this attack will help push Putin towards accepting a ceasefire.
Moscow in flames. The Ukrainian Air Force has been targeting Russia's military, logistics and energy infrastructure for months. The attacks have been effective in many regions of Russia. But for the first time this year, Moscow was directly targeted. Moscow was targeted with the biggest airstrike of this year. Airports were shut down. Many facilities came under attack. A large sortie of special drones, including Ukrainian Peklo drones, flew over Moscow. This bold attack on the heart of the Kremlin was a direct message to Putin and shocked Russia. After the attack, tensions peaked in the Kremlin corridors. While some Russian officials have suggested that Ukraine should retaliate with Oreshnik missiles, Putin's response remains a big question mark. Moreover, Trump's statement that Russia has no cards in possible peace talks is the clearest indication that the United States has turned its back on Moscow. All eyes are now on how Putin will respond to this challenge. Will Russia respond to the Ukrainian attack? Or will this attack pave the way for a ceasefire? The whole world is waiting for the answers under the shadow of great uncertainty. We will now analyse the details of Ukraine's daring attack and look for answers to these questions. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and like us to stay informed about our content. Russia has announced that it has suffered a major drone attack. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that 91 drones were shot down over the Moscow region overnight. 126 of the drones were shot down over Kursk, 38 over Bryansk, 25 over Belgorod, 22 over Ryazan, 10 over Kaluga, 8 over Lipetsk and Oryol, 6 over Voronezh, and 3 over Nizhny Novgorod. In total, 337 drones were allegedly intercepted. According to the figures released by the ministry, the airstrikes were one of the largest since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin and Moscow Region Governor Andrei Vorobyov confirmed the attack. The Ukrainian wing claimed responsibility for the attack and shared details about the attack. According to Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation, the attack is an additional signal to Putin that he should also deal with the air ceasefire. Kovalenko said that not only oil refineries, but also drones can constantly fly en masse over Moscow. The Ukrainian armed forces reported that the Moscow oil refinery targeted production facilities and that civilian infrastructure facilities were damaged as a result of Russian air defense. Russian air defense was involved in the fight against drones, in particular Pantsir S-1 systems and electronic warfare systems. Flights at Moscow's Zhukovsky, Domodedovo and Strigino airports were temporarily suspended. Many flights to Moscow were diverted to other airports. Eyewitnesses reported seeing drones flying in the night sky, followed by the sound of multiple explosions and numerous fires. The attack began shortly after 3 a.m. local time. Damage to residential buildings was caused by Russian air defense and electronic warfare systems trying to shoot down drones flying over residential areas. The governor of the Moscow region confirmed that 1 person was killed and 3 injured in the morning in Leninsky urban area and Domodedovo. According to the official, drone debris crashed into an apartment building in Ramensky, damaging at least 7 apartments on the 19th to 22nd floors. Another drone exploded near a residential building in Vidnoye, damaging several apartments. Falling debris was also reported from other parts of the Moscow region, including the town of Chernogolovka. It was also reported that a drone hit the upper floors of a residential skyscraper on Domodedovskaya Street in Moscow. The blast wave shattered windows on the upper floors. There was damage to railway tracks near Domodedovo station, and a fire broke out in the parking lot of a local business. Prior to this, the head of Domodedovo reported that trains were not running in both directions from the station. As of 8 a.m, train traffic at the station has resumed. The video posted on social networks shows an explosion in an apartment building in the southern Moscow region. Local news outlets published a video and photos of the aftermath of the attack on the Oka Center oil depot in the city of Serpukhov in Moscow region. In the footage recorded by an eyewitness, dense black smoke is seen rising from the oil depot in the early morning. However, the photos show that the oil product tank was not damaged, only the stairs leading to the roof of the tank were damaged. The photo shows what appears to be the drone's warhead near the base of the fuel tank, but it did not explode on impact. Instead, the fuel inside the drone caught fire but was immediately extinguished. Social media also shared footage of a nighttime fire at an oil depot near the city of Oriol in the Oriol region. The drones are believed to have targeted the Russian Stalny oil depot in the village of the same name. The oil depot is located approximately 110 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. It belongs to JSC Yugo-Zapad Transneft product and is a key element of the oil product pipeline to facilities such as the Stanovo linear pumping distribution station, Plavsk intermediate pumping station, 8H linear pumping distribution station, and Bryansk filling station. As can be seen, Ukraine's massive attack of 340 drones has thrown Russia into chaos. Andrei Kartapolov, chairman of the Russian State Duma's Defense Committee, said it was Ukraine's largest air campaign since the beginning of the war. Kartapolov called on the Kremlin to retaliate, saying that Moscow should hit Ukraine with Oreshnik missiles in response to this attack. So what do we know about the Peklo special drone that played a role in Ukraine's massive attack that shook Moscow? How could this deadly technology become a nightmare for Russia? In early December, Ukraine started buying missiles of its own development. President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the delivery of the first batch of Peklo missile drones to the Ukrainian armed forces. The characteristics of these new drones were quite dazzling. Known in Ukrainian as Peklo, or Hell, the newest locally produced munition has a significantly longer range than the Western cruise and tactical ballistic missiles in Kiev's inventory. Reports indicate that Peklo can reach ranges of up to 700 kilometers and speeds of up to 700 kilometers per hour. With this range ratio, the Peklo drone missile is a new word in the capabilities of the Ukrainian Defense Forces to hit military targets on the territory of the Russian Federation. It is important to note that unlike conventional missiles, drone missiles have the ability to change direction, overcome obstacles, and operate in conditions of counteraction with an electronic warfare system. With these capabilities, Peklo, which has autonomous driving, puts about 20 airfields of the tactical aviation of the Russian aerospace forces on alert, because Peklo is capable of reaching all these Russian airports. Important airfields such as Milarovo, Savoslayka and Engels appear to be within the range of Peklo's destruction zone. Engels and Savoslayka airfields are also bases for the strategic bombers of the Russian Federation and are also within Peklo's range. There is another very interesting detail about Peklo. The mounting structures in the upper part of the body of the UAV missile indicate that the missile can be launched not from the ground, but from air carriers, i.e., fighter jets. This increases the tactical and technical characteristics of Peklo and its ability to hit targets in the deep regions of the Russian Federation. Although the exact specifications of the Peklo missile have not yet been revealed, official photos provide some clues to its characteristics. As for the dimensions, the approximate length and wingspan of the Peklo is estimated at about 2 meters. Due to the compact size of the missile, the weight of the warhead is unlikely to exceed 50 kilograms. This estimate is comparable to conceptually similar systems such as Anduril's Barracuda. While it is technically possible to increase the warhead weight, it would reduce the missile's range proportionally. Peklo's propulsion system is a compact turbojet engine, but its specific model has not yet been defined. For such airborne systems, thrust levels of 400 to 600 newtons, achievable with engines weighing between 4 and 8 kilograms, may be sufficient. The maximum thrust can reach 1,500 newtons, supported by engines weighing around 17 kilograms. Closer, more detailed photographs reveal even more intriguing details. For example, it is clear that the Peklo missile's hull is built using aviation production technologies involving metal and rivets. This reliable and well-established solution allows hulls to be produced on an industrial scale. The hull consists of only a few large sections, which simplifies the installation of components and assemblies. As already mentioned, the motor is mounted externally. This design choice is likely to increase ease of installation, save internal space inside the hull, and eliminate the need for air intakes. In addition, officials say that these missiles, called Peklo, are cost-effective and can compete with some Russian cruise missiles in terms of performance. The Peklo unmanned aerial vehicle missile is known to cost about $1 million. Ukraine manages to deliver powerful blows to Russia at low cost. But can these successes bring peace to Ukraine? Negotiations to end Russia's war in Ukraine may not create a new global security body, but they could shape the future of international cooperation, and the world is ready to be reorganized. United States President Donald Trump has fired a wrecking ball at the institutions and partnerships at the heart of the United States-led international system, with his tariff threats bringing turmoil to the global economy. His spat with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office in late February dashed all expectations that the United States would continue to be a reliable partner for its traditional allies and friends. Beyond the United States, European countries want more control over their own security, and many other countries are striving for effective forms of multilateralism that are not led by the West. Responding to all these pressures with a comprehensive agreement in Ukraine is probably impossible. The positions of Kiev and Moscow are too sharply opposed, and the rest of the world too fragmented. An agreement could easily collapse. The history books are full of failed peace attempts, including those of 1938 and 1939, which failed to prevent the outbreak of World War II. But outside of a grand plan, a practical peace process that brings together both great powers and frontline states is possible in Ukraine. Past settlements offer guidance. Even a partial settlement can be effective if it halts the conflict. Ceasefires have proved lasting in other frozen conflicts, including those negotiated in Korea in the 1950s and Cyprus in the 1970s. A territorial arrangement does not have to be permanent. Finland ceded territory to the Soviet Union in the 1940s, but managed to get small pieces back decades later. A settlement in Ukraine should not undermine the credibility of the Russian or Ukrainian governments by sowing the seeds of World War II, as the post-World War I settlements did to the German government, and it must offer Ukraine security guarantees backed by real power, unlike the weak promises offered to Eastern European states in the interwar years. The result will not be a perfect deal, but if all of these conditions are met, an agreement in Ukraine today can keep the peace until conditions are more favourable for a lasting settlement. It could even provide a template for effective multilateral cooperation in this turbulent new world. There are reasons to want to turn the agreement ending Russia's war in Ukraine into a grand bargain. The conflict is linked to hostilities elsewhere, with Iran and North Korea supplying arms to Russia and North Korea supplying troops. A comprehensive solution could provide a framework for resolving conflicts in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East by establishing a whole new security mechanism to address the destabilizing effects of weaponized finance, trade wars, and fractured diplomacy. The model would be negotiations to end World Wars I and II. These solutions were comprehensive, evoked bold visions of world peace, and included territorial agreements, population movements, security clauses, and financial reparations, both aimed at eliminating the root causes of the conflicts they ended 1919 by promoting democratization to reduce militarism, and 1945 by demanding the unconditional surrender of defeated Germany and Japan to end the aggression of these particular countries. In both cases, the negotiating parties largely agreed on the cause of the war and how it could be eliminated, and could impose their views on the defeated. But this is not the case in Ukraine, making a grand bargain impossible today. The parties disagree on what caused the war, and no amount of mediation or external pressure can reconcile their positions. For Ukraine, the cause of the war is clear. Putin decided to seize and annex Crimea in 2014, then foment low-intensity conflict in the Donbass region, and finally launch a full-scale invasion in February 2022. Removing the source of the conflict would have meant removing the current Russian government, which is unlikely. From Russia's point of view, the cause of the war is very different. Putin claimed that the Ukrainian government was illegitimate, violated constitutional norms, and was ruled by Nazis. He argued that security guarantees from the West, especially the vague promise of NATO membership offered to Ukraine in 2008, bolstered the Ukrainian state and questioned the fundamental concept of Ukraine's existence as an independent state. Coming to an understanding of the underlying cause of the war is a precondition for negotiations on a comprehensive settlement. Without this, it is futile to try to get the warring parties to agree on permanent territorial borders, how to secure them, and how to finance reconstruction. If an overall solution is off the table, the next best option is a partial solution. Indeed, since 1945, partial solutions have been the most successful way to keep the peace, including by preventing the resumption of war in deadlocked conflicts. When these temporary solutions were reached, the parties did not know how long they would last. But in many cases, they have worked and proved remarkably durable, especially when the great powers of the day have played a decisive role in forcing combatants to de-escalate. Verbal guarantees cannot support ceasefire agreements, but if a guarantee includes sufficient military presence to deter violations, it can sustain even a temporary solution that avoids recognizing a permanent territorial division or concession. To prevent the return of war in eastern Ukraine, the ceasefire line must be protected by a similarly effective show of military force. Capable countries should deploy sufficient troops and equipment to ensure a massive response if Russia or Ukraine violates the ceasefire. Without a substantial and enforceable security guarantee, the ceasefire will only serve as an invitation for Putin to plan Russia's next invasion of Ukraine and perhaps other countries. The roles of the United States and China in supporting or even negotiating a ceasefire or an agreement will be vital given the influence of the United States in Ukraine and China in Russia. They could also provide peacekeeping troops, but this is not strictly necessary if other countries do so. On the Ukrainian side of the ceasefire line, European forces could serve this function. France and the United Kingdom have raised this possibility, and their depth of military experience and nuclear status make them both natural candidates for the job. On the Russian side, China or Central Asian countries could take on a similar peacekeeping role. If the great powers cannot solve every problem and their leaders begin to think otherwise, a more unstable and dangerous world awaits them. In 1807, Napoleon met Russian Tsar Alexander on a raft on the Niemen River in Prussia, and the two men ended a war that involved most of Europe by dividing the continent between them. It was inevitable that they would fight and the war would start again. The Napoleonic Wars lasted almost a decade. Inclusive diplomacy is a much preferable approach to resolving today's conflict. Many European and Asian leaders have spoken of the need for new multilateralism, and now they have the opportunity to put their words into practice. If they can provide effective guarantees to maintain the ceasefire in Ukraine, they can show that a truly multilateral international order can work even without the United States acting as the global police force. Thank you for tuning in.